Welcome to this video series where we are going to help you IT students, information technology students who do prac exams or paper 1. And this is the 2023 paper, but not the November one, but the June supplementary one. So there's some good examples in this paper that we can work through. And we're going to start with question 1. Just a reminder that there are links in the video description to the data file so that you can go practice before you even watch this video, as well as links to the other questions. So let's get stuck into this question 1. So here we've got our section A, question 1, which is some general programming skills, some basic grade 10 and grade 11 work. And they give us the basic graphical user interface. You can see there's probably be about 5 questions. And let's go get stuck into 1.1. I've got the files open already over here. And I'm assuming we're going to be clicking on that button for 1.1. So let's go find out what they want us to do. 1.1. Write code to change the content and appearance of the edit box Q11 as follows. We want the font size to be 14. We want the words hello must appear in the edit box and it must be underlined, and the background color of the component must be green. So there's 4 main things there, 4 marks. Let's go do it. So we are dealing with the edit box Q11, and the first thing they said, they want us to change the font size to 14. So we're going to go to the font property, and there's a size sub property of it, and we're going to change that to 14. That's pretty easy. The next, they want us to say hello world in the edit box, and if you remember correctly, that is the text property, and we're going to make that equal to the text hello world. So that's easy so far. The color of the edit box is also easy, so I'm going to do that one next. So let's go change that one. We're going to change its color. There's a color property, and we know that colors start with a CL prefix, so it's CL green. So they said they must change it to green. So we've changed the background color, and that's that. So those are all done. The only one that's a bit tricky is the underlined one. So when you're dealing with the underline, I just want to show you where we can get some help. So if I click on the edit box, you can see all the properties of the edit box over here and see the color. Now at the font, when we were at the font, we could easily go and change the font's size. That was easy. But if you look here, style, that's where we do the underline and that. So it's FS underline, FS italic, is FS bold. But these are all properties that are inside of square brackets. So you can see what they should be. It's almost like a set of options. So you can have something that's both bold and italic and underline at the same time. So to do that, we're going to say our edit box dot font. Remember, it's a font property and it's the style property of it. Now we can't make it equal to FS underline. That won't work because that's not a whole list of options. So we're going to put that options in square brackets. So if you wanted to do more than one, then you could have put like a comma and said FS bold as well and so on. You could have done something like that, but we only want one property, which is FS underline. So let's go test that. And if I click on formatting, there we go. You can see that it's 14 font, it's underlined, it says hello world, and the text box is green. So we know that that is correct. Let's move on to the next question. 1.2, they ask us to generate a random number between 1 and 99, including those values. We must determine whether that number is a single digit or a 2-digit number. So if it's a single digit, then we're going to say the number and is a single digit. If it's not, then it's going to be that is a 2-digit number. So quite simple. So let's go have a look at it. We're going to click on that button over there, and we're going to display it in the panel. That's where we put in our result. So let's double click here. And we're going to first of all create a variable for our random number. So I'm going to make an rnum variable of type integer. And we want to first of all generate a random number. Now there are lots of ways of doing it. You could have used the random function, and that generates 99 random numbers if I put a 99 there, but those numbers are going to be from 0 to 98, one before that. So you could just plus 1 to it to get a random number from 1 to 99. That's one way. We could have also used random range. So random range, open bracket, and you'll see random range does not work because at the top we need to include math. So one of these must include math. You can add it at the end, or we can add it here. Add math. The math library allows us to access random range. And so when I come here, you can see random range now works. Now if I say random range, and open bracket, you see we're starting from 1 and going till, now you would think it's 99, but with random range it goes from 1 before the last number. So we actually want to go from 1 to 100, and so that will be from 1 to 99. So that's going to generate our random number. So then how do we know if it's a single digit number or if it's a 2-digit number? Well, the biggest 1-digit number is a 9. So anything below 9 is a single digit. Anything above 9 will be a 2-digit number. So that's what I'm going to do. If rnum is less than equal to 9, then we know that it's a single digit number. Then we're going to say the panel Q12, what property of it, the caption property of it, is going to equal to whatever rnum is, and then we're going to add the text is a single digit value. But remember, this whole thing needs to be a string. That is a string, that's correct, but rnum is not, so we must convert it from what it is, an int, to what we want it to become, a string. So there we go. That's going to happen if rnum is less than equal to 9. But if it's not less than equal to 9, and we know that the only other possibility, because it can only go from 1 until 99, the biggest number it can be is a 2-digit number. So then we're going to just, and watch how I do this, I'm going to copy all of this so we can work faster. I'm going to paste it because we're still going to add the number, but we're going to change the text here to a 2-digit number. And by doing that, I just typed that, saved some time because that typing went very quickly. So let's test it quickly. So we're going to have to test a few options. So random number, boom, 93 is a 2-digit number. Let's keep testing it until we can get to a single-digit number. Yep, there we go. So 6 is a single-digit number, and therefore it's working. That's 1.2. Let's move on to the next one. 1.3, we are given a diagram of a nut, and it's made up of a hexagon and a circle, and the diameter of the circle is also the same as one side of the hexagon. And they tell me that the area for the shaded part of that is that formula. So they give me the formula for that, and they tell me that D is both the length of the hexagon and the diameter. That's great. So we're going to get the value for D in an edit box, and then we must write, and then we must calculate the shaded area for that. So we basically get the value from the edit box, calculate the formula, and display it rounded to 1 decimal place in the panel. So let's go start with that. Let's leave the formula there so we can see it. So here is the question. We're going to double click on area over there. So we're going to first of all get our input, which is to get the value of D, which I think might be a real number at times. So if I look here, let's assume that we could enter in a real number. So I'm happy with that. So let's make it RD of type real. And then I'm going to make a variable here called R area, so we can work out the area later. So RD is going to be whatever's in EDT Q13. What property? The text property. Now that is a string. That is a real. We must convert it from what it is. It's a string to what we want to become a real, but there's no string to real. It's string to float. So convert the string to a float and put it into the RD variable. Now that we've got that, we can work out our area. Let's work it out slowly but surely. Let's look. So the first thing we need to do is do this part in brackets. So it's 3 times about the square root of 3. So let's put that in brackets. So we're going to say 3 multiplied by the square root of 3. So I put that in brackets like that. Are we happy? Then we're going to take that answer and divide it by 2. And this is where brackets become very important. So we're going to take that whole thing and divide it by 2. So that's my one calculation, and we can actually put brackets around that just to make sure that it keeps it all together. So that's all done, and then we're going to multiply that by our variable squared. So we're going to multiply that by the square of our RD variable. I'm actually going to make this the left side. I'm going to make other variables just to break it down a bit. The R right, the R left, and then the R area. But this is my left side of the calculation, which is all that. And then we're going to minus the right side. So let's work out the right side, which is pi, and we can just use pi as a constant because it's already been created for us. It knows what its value is, and we're going to take d divided by 2 in brackets. Oh wait, careful. So we're going to take d divided by 2, and then we're going to square that answer. So be very careful here. So we're going to take variable that we've got, we're going to divide it by 2. That's what we did there, but that whole thing there must be squared. So this whole thing, we must square this answer, and then that answer will be multiplied by pi. And then my area is simply R left minus the R right. And then we're going to display it in the panel. So panel Q13 dot the caption of it, and we're simply going to put in the value, which is our area, but we want it rounded. If you remember correctly, we want it rounded to 1 decimal place. So I could actually round it over here. So we can use the round to function. Now, do you remember when we added math at the top? That will work fine if we've got math at the top. If your round 2 has a line underneath it, that means you haven't got math at the top. So round 2 takes in 2 parameters. It takes in the value that you're rounding, and then it takes into how many decimal places. And remember, your decimal places must be negative numbers. So we want -1 decimal places. So that's going to round to 1 decimal place, and then we're going to display it in the panel. Remember, we must add the cm squared at the end. So we're going to, over here, display our area, which has been rounded, plus the text cm squared. But that whole thing needs to be a string. That is a string, but that's not a string. That's a float. So we convert it from what it is, float, to string, and we can then do that and display. Because it's already rounded, we don't need to do the float string f. So let's try it. We want to test it with the value of 5, and we should get 45.3. So we're going to type in a 5, click on the area, 45.3 centimeters squared. So there we know that it's working. 1.4, we've got a text file called words.txt, which contains a list of words, and the program must count the number of times a word that the user gives is in the text file. So let's go through the sequencing. They want us to extract the word that the user wants to check from the edit box, and then we want to count how many times that word occurs in the file, but here's the key, regardless of whether the word was entered in small capital letters. So we need to make sure that if whatever they type in, it doesn't matter if it's small or capitals, it must work either way. If the word occurs in the text file, display the number of occurrences. So for example, capacity is 4 times. If it's not, then we must say that the word's not found. We are reading from a text file. So first things first, let's go to our document, our files here, and we're going to double click on the button. As you can see, they've already done the assign and the reset for us. So I'm assuming we don't need to do the error check-in because they would have done that as well. So we don't need to do error checking. So there is a T file. So I'm going to get my input, my S word variable, and then I want an S line because we need that for text file variable. And we're going to make that a string. And so we are going to, first of all, we need to get the word that we are looking for. So the word we're going to get from EDT Q14, we're going to get it from the text property. So that's the word we are looking for. Now we're going to go through our text file. Now the assign's been done, the reset's been done. So now we're going to go and say while not end of file, and the text file variable is called T file. While we are not at the end of the text file, we're going to say begin, and we're going to read line from that file into a variable called sLine. So each line from the text file, which I've got over here, so accessory is going to be read into sLine, and then it's going to go to the next one, and then do the next word, which is archive, and so on and so on and so on. So we're going to do that. At the end of the loop, we're going to close the text file. So don't forget the full algorithm. It's assign, reset, while not end of file, read line, close. That's if you're not doing the error checking. Now that we've got that, we want to check if the value that we've just extracted, this S line, if that S line is the same as the word that we are looking for, then we need to count it. So we're going to make a Dracula variable, a count variable, not a count Dracula variable. Make it an integer, and we're going to initialize it over here. Always initialize your variables if you're going to be adding on to them. Initialize the count variable so that every time we find a match, we are going to do what? We are going to increase this I count. Say, hey, we found it. We found it 1, and then we found it 2, and so on. But if you remember correctly, if it doesn't matter how they enter it in, so if they say capacity, and I look over there, capacity, that must match, even though it's not spelled the same because of the capital letters. So let's just make that all uppercase. So the uppercase version of sLine must equal to the uppercase version of S-word. Then it doesn't matter how they type it in. It'll convert the value from the text file to uppercase, we convert the input to uppercase, and then we can compare it. So once we've done that, we want to display 2 potential things. We either display in how many occurrences or if there was no word found. And that will be easy. If count variable is equal to 0, then no occurrences was found. Then we are going to say in the rich edit, .lines.add, we're going to add the word not found. But if count is a number, it's bigger than 0, it's not 0. So that means we found the potential words. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy and paste this, but now we're displaying the word occurrences followed by the count variable. But remember, this lines.add needs a string. That's a string, that's not a string. We must convert that from what it is, an int, to what we want to become a string. So there we go. Once we've done all the counting, then we can go, if it's a 0, hey, no word not found. But if it's not a 0, that means we found a couple of them, so we can say how many occurrences it is. So let's go test it out. So we want to find the word capacity. So I'm going to type it in very weird like that. Did we find it? There were 4 occurrences of the word. But if we type in the word Mr. Long, I don't think there are any words like that in there. Let's try another word. Let's try podcast. Podcast. We know it's in there, but there's only 3 occurrences of it. So there we go. I think it's working. Now for the last question, for question 1.5. A booster rocket uses 7.5% of its fuel per second from liftoff. The rocket shuts down when the fuel capacity is below 200 liters. Do the following. We're going to convert an algorithm on the next page into programming code. So they're going to give us the algorithm. Here we go. They gave us the algorithm. They gave us the code. We just need to convert that into Delphi. And that's going to display the seconds traveled and so on. So let's just follow this algorithm bit by bit. And they give us an example. So we're basically going to be displaying the number of seconds. We're going to be displaying the fuel used, used and the fuel left until it gets below 200. So that's the example that they gave us. Let's follow this algorithm bit by bit. So first of all, let's go to our program. We're going to click on the booster rocket there. And so they've done a bunch of things there for us. So we're going to come over here and write our code here. So let's just follow the algorithm. Enter the total liters of fuel before lift off. So we're going to enter that value, and you can see there we're going to type it in something like that, like an input box. So let's make our input box exactly like that. And so we're going to store it in some sort of variable. So let's come here. We're going to make a variable over here, which will probably be a real, just in case they type in a decimal number. So let's call that the total of the fuel. So you're going to make that a real variable. And we are going to say my total variable is going to equal to an input box. And we want the top value to say fuel. We want the next value to say total liters of fuel. And then there'll be the box where they type in. Now, I'll give you a tip here. I type in that value automatically in the input box so that every time I run the code, I don't have to type that every single time. So actually come here. A lot of people will go comma and just put quote, quote, and then they'll type in the 550. I actually put in that default value. It just saves me having to type it out every single time when I test the code. That's an input box. That's going to take that, and that other string and display it, and it's going to put the value from there into there, but it returns a string. So we actually need to convert this from a string to a float so that it can fit into the R total variable. So that is my input. So enter the total liters of fuel before liftoff using the input box, and we assign that value to a variable for the fuel left. So basically we've done that in one step. We've put that value into the R total. So I think that is what they want. So we're going to assign the value that we just did there. Then initialize a counter for the number of seconds. So I'm going to make a seconds variable, seconds, which we're going to make an integer, and we're going to initialize it to a 0. So that's line 3. Then we're going to have a while loop while fuel left is more. Now remember, fuel left is our value that we got from the input box, while the fuel left is more than or equal to 200. While our R total, because that's our fuel left, is greater than equal to 200. While the fuel left is more than and equal to 200, then we want to do all of this in the while loop. So we're going to put a begin end here, and this is the end of the while loop. What are we going to do? We're going to increase the counter by 1, which is our seconds variable. So increase our seconds. We're going to calculate the fuel used, which is 1.7% of the fuel left. Remember, our fuel left was the value that we entered. We're going to calculate the fuel used. Let's put that in a brand new variable. So we're going to make a variable called R used, and we're going to say R used is going to be 7.5% of the fuel left. 7.5%. How do I make 7.58%? You divide it by 100. Or you could have said 0.075, that would have worked as well, and multiply that by the fuel left, which is our R total variable. So that is that line 6. Then subtract the fuel used that we just calculated from the fuel left. So we're going to basically take that value and subtract it from the R total. So R total is going to be whatever R total is at the moment minus this used amount. That's going to be that line, and then display the counter, which is our seconds, the fuel used, which we just worked out there, and the fuel left, which is our R total. So we want to display. So we're going to look over here at how they displayed it. So we want to, as you can see, there are #9, some tabs there, and they've already done the headings there. So actually, just a little trick here. You can actually just copy that. Actually, just copy this line, and I'm going to paste it here just to help me here. So that's a little trick there. So for seconds, we actually want to display the variable seconds. And for fuel used, that's going to be my R used variable. And then for the fuel left, that's going to be my R total variable. There's quite nifty, but we want to convert these because this whole thing needs to be a string. And if you look here, we can convert it there. You can see to 2 decimal places. And they say, yeah, these must be displayed to 2 decimal places for those 2 values. That we can leave as is. So we're going to say the seconds is going to be converted from an int to a string. That's fine. And then for the fuel used, put it on a new line so you can see it. We're going to convert this from what it is, a float, to a string f. And we want to say ff used, we say ff fixed, and we're going to say 8,2 because we want to display to 2 decimal places. Then we're going to say +9, and then R total, we're going to do the exact same thing. So I can just copy that, paste it there, and then this last little bit I'm actually going to copy as well and put that at the end so that we display them both the same way. Take the seconds, convert from an int to a string, take the used from a float to a string, and an R total from a float to a string, and then display those with #9s between them. And I think that is all. Display it and then end the loop, which we've already done. If you look over here, that's where I end my loop. So that is line, technically, that is line 1 and 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And those are the 9 lines. So let's go test it to see if we get the same results. So here's the program. So they use that as an example. So we're going to click on the button, type in 550. Do you see how easy it is? I don't need to type anything because it's already there by default. Go OK. And let's look at our results. Do the numbers look the same? The numbers look pretty the same. There we go. So it takes 13 seconds for the rocket to switch off using fuel because it gets below 200. There we go. So we just followed the algorithm and followed the steps and we got all 9 marks. Okay, so there we go. That's question 1. Well done. Let's move on to question 2 now in our next video. It would really help the channel if you become a subscriber and stay a subscriber and share us with your friends as well. Remember, we also have a theory channel at Mr. Long Computer Terms and on TikTok at Mr. Long Education. And remember, don't do it the long way, do it the Mr. Long way.